Hey, Richard.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How are you today, Richard? How are you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm decent. It's almost summer outside in Seattle.
Yeah.
The sun's almost here.
Almost summer.
I know. It starts real late here. Literally July 4th is when the sun comes out. So we don't really have any at the moment, but soon it's coming.
I'm sitting here like it has been summer for a couple months.
I know. You guys have been like burning up the past couple of times I've talked to you.
Yeah.
I was literally...
Your phone melted when we last talked, I think.
It was quite a hilarious predicament. I was looking back on that, actually, and it was just so funny because... So, for podcast listeners and everything, we were doing this recording last week, and my heating equipment, because it's in Idaho and it's in the summer, and my place doesn't have AC at all, so I was burning up. And I was we're having this conversation, and we're trying to dive into these deep thoughts and learning about Richard and his art and everything, and I'm just I'm going through different paper towels, wiping my sweat off.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a good look for you if we kept that visual recording.
No. Absolutely. So
it would have been funny, at least. I don't know.
Nick's like, that would have been great content.
Yeah.
Anything at my expense is honestly, I'm go for it. With this podcast, everything. As long as we lift up who our guest artists are, and if it's at my expense, it's all fine.
Good. Okay.
It's all good with me. But yeah, I mean, so it's not the sunny over there. That's cool. It's just spot to experience summer. How else has Seattle been? I mean, Seattle's been kind of crazy right now. What's been going on in your experience?
Yeah, well, everything has been happening lately, and I think, God, I mean, where to start?
Right.
Besides the pandemic, the Black Lives Matter protests, CHOP coming up and then getting torn down.
Yeah, it got torn down. I heard a little bit about that.
Yeah, that happened just yesterday, in fact.
Yesterday. Oh.
Wow. And it's still kind of a battleground right now because, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to get into it, but the police precinct that had left is now back, and the security check stations that people were pretending were there when CHOP was there are now there because the precinct has put them up.
Interesting.
So you've got a few blocks right now that kind of feel like they're under, I don't know, military control. It's very, very crazy. Yeah, I mean, Warren, you lived here.
Yeah.
Nick, you lived here. Yes?
Yeah, I used to live in that. So I saw the zone.
Yeah.
For CHOP. That was where. Yeah, that's where we lived.
Yeah, we lived right above Spin Cycle Records, right on Broadway.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's right in that area, right next to Cal Anderson, and so that just blows my mind. So you're saying they had kind of security checkpoints within CHOP that was run by the people that were running CHOP.
They didn't have them in CHOP, but you were seeing media come out saying
that
they're
locked down.
Yeah, they're putting up check stations. There was a lot of false information coming out about it.
Fox News putting up the same dude in different places.
Oh man, that was.
Yeah,
I saw that blunder, and I was like, "That is hilarious that you guys think that you could pull off that shit within this day and age."
Well, they can though. I mean, the people who watch Fox regularly aren't, fact checking that sort of thing, and they don't. I don't think they see the same kind of media that we see. So, I think that that read to their viewers as Seattle is, burning down.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's hopefully the majority is seeing is that the same dude photoshopped in all these different.
Wait. So is Seattle still there?
Seattle still exists.
Still exists.
Okay.
Still a part of the United States as of right now.
For what that's worth, we're still here and part of the country. A lot could be said about CHOP that I can't say as much about it,
Fair
but
enough.
I you know, I can for what it was or what it is, you know, at least they were trying something new. It stood as a protest against,
Totally.
you know, a very unjust system, and whether or not it was perfect or not, it was a statement, and that statement has been very harshly stomped down by the system that Chop was protesting. So I don't know if any change is going to come from it, but it certainly shows the kind of power that that the system still has, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it was a show of power from probably for both at the same time. You know, the fact that like protesters can just take over a section of a city in protest and have no police be there because that's what the people there want. That's huge.
True that. That's never been done before.
I've not seen that happen. I mean, at least in my lifetime, where literally a whole like section of a city just no longer belongs to the city for however long Chop was up. If there's any kind of protest that's big, that's I mean, gotta be up there,
right?
You know, surprisingly, and I was reading a little bit about this. Seattle has had that kind of protest a few times in the past, more so than some places in the country, where people will protest and take over a section of land or a building. It's happened for a few public places that are now public spaces in the city that were made public spaces due to protests in the 70s on a couple of different occasions. I thought that was very interesting.
That is interesting.
That sounds like something in Seattle. That is very Seattle-esque in a lot of ways. And it is to your point, like an interesting testament to what we can do as individuals and as a community to do that. And I was pretty amazed by it myself. Like, and of course, like there were, I'm sure, like systematic problematic. I just used a bunch of weird words there, but that
hydromatic
happened with the hydromatic,
grease
systematic, hydromatic, grease lightning. But you know, I'm sure there was structural kind of stuff that needed to be worked out, right, and stuff like that. But what I was loving to see from it was, everybody getting together and sharing all these different things, watching documentaries together, learning together. That is a really cool thing that they used it for.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great testament to say, like, all right, so the police leave, whether this is like the long-term thing or not, to then use that space to be able to make art, to be able to, like, I saw that street that was made by like Black Lives Matter all across through there, which is really cool. And then using that to also like show information in a lot of ways. Like I saw that they're showing like the 13th documentary, which is a great documentary, and I recommend people to watch it. It's definitely provocative in a lot of ways. So it is quite an interesting time, and it's interesting to see that it's now done. It's for the time being, I guess.
Yeah, we have yet to see what sort of long-term effects it might have. I'm hoping something more permanent will come from it, but we'll see.
Yeah, I feel like it must, man. That's one of the things that we hope for, right? Is that I think with all these kind of with the protests, everything that's happened, one of the things that I've been really excited to see was I think that we are starting to get the handle of using our platform with social media to get action done, right? And with George Floyd's officers getting charged, being put to court, being tested, and I think that there's with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and Elijah McClain, I think people are really pushing to get that going, to get these people put in front of a court, right? But hopefully that extends though to other movements as well. I think that we can start using this as a larger base, as a whole country or a world, to push forward legislation or whatever to fix this problem. But I don't know. I don't know shit. I don't know anything.
It's a hard time to be an optimist. I think it almost feels like optimism is privilege at this point. I haven't seen good things for a while. So I hope that something good will come from these things. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's take a little segue from that. Let's talk about art. Let's talk about things that we do. And so, Richard, what is it that you do? Tell me about yourself. Tell us the world about you.
Yeah.
And what you do. What's going on?
I'm a songwriter and performer who studied those things and was able to make a career doing it, touring with shows and songs that I wrote with my stage partner, mostly Jinkx Monsoon, whom you're aware of from either Cornish, where we both went to school, or RuPaul's Drag Race, where you maybe saw them on the TV.
On the TV and television.
But we were able to tour and perform our shows around the country and large portions of the world. That's been my bread and butter for a few years now. And even with the pandemic going on right now, I've still been able to, get some songwriting and some performing out there in other ways. That's my main interest. That's my main love.
Yeah. So
how have you been? How have you been doing that during the pandemic? What are some avenues you've been taking?
There've been a couple of different avenues. Luckily, a lot of songwriting is already done at home in the corner of my living room. So
Sure.
I'm still able to do that. I've written some songs for some podcasts, for some jingles for other people's shows, and also for my own podcast that I was working on with BenDeLeCreme, Jinkx Monsoon, and Peaches Christ, called WQUR, Queer Quarantine Radio.
We love it.
Thank you.
Love the show.
Yeah, that's been my big, artistic output through this pandemic, was our putting together basically a radio play, and performing and writing it and writing all the music for it in sort of a faux 1950s, 1940s style, like a radio play. That's been my baby since we started this whole walk.
That's awesome.
I've listened to the first 2 episodes, and I know that you were kind of putting it on pause a little bit because of everything going on. Like, has there been any kind of progress with that as of recently? Are we?
Not at the moment. I think we have plans for a 3rd episode. We're still in, and it's difficult to. I'm sure it's different for everyone, but when you're creating art, maybe you guys can feel this way as well. But when you're creating art, specifically when you're creating comedy, like we're doing, like myself, it's hard to know when the right time is to be doing that. Comedy is important for people to provide levity, or even to still get a social message across. But, sometimes it's like, I don't feel like I'm in the right headspace, or that I should be in the space of, making fart jokes right now. When is the right time for that? I think we're all sort of feeling that out at the moment,
Yeah. I feel like it's this weird thing where it's like, I feel like comedy is something that heals us and that can bridge divides. But I also feel like, I'm like, is it the time to start healing, or is it the time to continue tearing down the system and to continue making people uncomfortable and to continue chopping away at this thing that we're all trying to end and we're all trying to make better? Like, is it the time to bridge a gap, or is it the time to burn more bridges? Right. That's something that I think about sometimes. I'm like, is it worth it to bring people together right now when we really still should be attacking the system and going after the things that have been ignored for hundreds of years that are still systemic in our society? I feel like we still need to be, taking down monuments, writing new laws, like and pushing and pushing and pushing until the change happens that we need to see. And I don't think the amount of change that needs to happen has happened yet.
No.
So it's tough to be like, but then on the flip side, it's like even during the tumultuous times, like, and you still want like, let's say like you still want after a day of rioting or a day of whatever happens or like protesting, you still want to come home and turn on something funny so that you can like get some rest at night. So it's like both things. Like you want to be able to provide that for the revolutionaries and for anybody who needs it at a time where things are so difficult and so uncomfortable. But then it's like, is it better for me to spend my energy making that fluff that helps people get to sleep, or making something that's going to cut deeper into this problem?
Yeah, and I think there is a way to make humor that also gets a point across.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to make as well. But it also, you know, my opinions on it change every day, because I can see something that's either pointed and funny or stupid and funny one day and think, oh, that's good, or that's exactly what I needed, and then later see something maybe similar or maybe just slightly different and think, oh, poor taste, or not the right time.
Right.
So I think multiply that times, you know, however many people are seeing this thing, and it's like everyone's going to have a different opinion on it, and I don't think it's ever going to be right for anyone. In any case, I hope to be able to laugh again soon. I see it possibly in my future, and when I can do that, you know, once we can all do that as a group, I think we'll be able to create some more funny.
Yeah, for sure,
absolutely.
It is disorienting a little bit, right? Where, it's. I see this a lot with people that are, you know, we're trying to find the right path within this, and I think this is a very important moment in our history, and just with so much going on at this moment right now, with a global pandemic and social, structural, cultural change, and still we're dealing with all these extra things that we're dealing with before this all even happened, right? So it's quite a heightened moment, but I know that a lot of us, you know, we're all trying to do the right thing. So what is the right thing? What's the right side of history to be a part of, you know? And or like I think we can mostly like figure out what the right side of history, or where to be on the right side of history, but how do you fit into that rather? Right? Where can I best place myself? Where can I best put my energy into making this world a better place? Into fighting for the movements that I believe in. And, you know, how do I do that through my art? Do I do that by providing levity? Do I do that by being one of the many that go out there with this group? And all that stuff kind of just like hits you every day, and especially for people that really care. And I think that a lot of us really care, you know. And and it's just like really, it's a really interesting time, and I don't have the answers. But it's good to talk about it with people.
And I think also for us as our WQUR group, part of it was, you know, is now a time for our voices to be heard as, you know, white presenting people. Even if we did have a message that we were, you know, putting into whatever comedy we were coming out, would now be the right time for that to come from our voices. So I think for the past few weeks, we're thinking let's do our best to amplify the voices that need to be heard right now. People of color, Black trans lives, you know, whoever has a history of being silenced. That's basically not us.
Right. And I will say, just as a quick thing, I loved your second episode dealing with the zombies and with PP Dick and dealing with the zombies and like the coronavirus aside. Like that's one thing, like for me, that worked hilariously. And I thought that was a really great way of, you know, presenting that as another problem, right? And like another circumstance. And as far as those things and like how to educate people and also be able to laugh at things, I thought that was really done successfully.
All
to
right,
you guys' credit.
We were talking about possibly including a clip. So for our viewers, maybe this is the clip we can use. The PP dick with the zombies. Yeah. So I'll edit that in during me saying this. And here we are with a clip from WQUR Radio. Boop.
Hello out there in quarantine land, and welcome to WQUR, Queer Quarantine Radio. Tune in this week for the first installments of thrilling serials like Peaches Christ, PP Dick.
The PP stands for private and paranormal, and dick is old-timey for detective, and also penis. Well, this dick may have gotten herself into a tight squeeze.
Leave it to Beelzy.
A wholesome American sitcom about a wholesome American family whose youngest just happens to be the fallen angel to the god Jehovah. He may be bringing on the end of times, but boys will be boys.
And Murder at Darlington Mansion.
The entire Darlington family has gathered to celebrate the birthday of their beloved matriarch, Lorna. But when her wicked twin sister crashes the party, the results are murder.
All this and more awaits you in episode 1 of
WQUR Queer Quarantine.
Boop. Okay, that'll be where we put it with the boops. Okay.
Put it with the boops.
Yeah, we'll put it with the boops. Okay.
You know what I say, honey? Put it with the boops.
We'll put it with the boops. Okay, and now we are back. Boop. There we go.
There you go. What a great clip.
What a great clip with the zombies, PP dick, coronavirus. Hey. Okay, so one of the things for me that really stands out about WQUR and like sets it apart from other things that I listen to is the awesome sound design. You know, I was listening and in like 10 minutes we had like old timey piano licks probably provided by you, and then there was like gunshots accompanied by a big band of horns, and then you also have this ability to get your mics to sound period correct. And then you have laugh tracks, and then you also have sound effects like demons rising up through the floorboards from hell. How do you all go about curating those ideas for sound and then also bringing them to life so that they end up in the final product?
That's a good question wrapped around some lovely sentiments. I mean, when we started working on WQUR, the idea was that it was going to be like an old time radio play, and in the 40s and 50s, when you had those going on, there would be people in studio making the sound effect noises with various tactile things. Picture the coconut halves from Monty Python and the Holy Grail standing in for, horse hooves clomping around. So we knew that we wanted to have a very obvious sound effect aspect, partially as an homage to that, but partially because it's necessary as a visual or as an audio medium. You don't have the visuals going on. So you wanted to paint sort of a soundscape to let people imagine what's happening. So when we're writing the scripts, we're writing in, very specific sound effects that we want when we want them. We have a pretty strong idea of what the sound is going to be like, and then we work with our sound designer, who was a fully other person, who that was their whole job, was putting that together. And
they did great.
Yes, for that last episode, Kevin Hurd does an amazing job, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of back and forth, especially since we can't all see each other. It's a lot of Zoom calls and a lot of phone calls, ironing that stuff out to make sure that the timing between our joke and the sound is just perfect enough to be the kind of funny that we want it to be,
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then,
go ahead.
We had that for the sound design, and then myself for the music, also trying to, ride the laughs, hit punchlines. It's a lot of voices being put together, trying to make the perfect joke,
That's so cool.
It does really well. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you guys are writing the script, you are all in separate spaces, I'm assuming. So are you all using, I know when we've done certain stuff like that, we use Google Drive because you can all edit things. Is that the system you all are using?
We use Google Docs to share a document.
Google Docs, yeah.
So we can all see what's being worked on, what edits have been made, suggest edits to everyone else, etc. To just compile everything. I use GarageBand and Google Drive to get my music across to people. Those are the main items, applications.
That's awesome. So, okay, another very specific question about WQUR. I really enjoy the ads, like the ads that you all put in, like for gay tag and other things. They kind of remind me of like a Wayne's World bits, like, do you know, like when they do like the suck cut with the with the thing. So with this like kind of short form sketch bit combat, do you guys take cues from SNL and or other sketch shows for this kind of format where it's like 10-minute sketch, 5-minute sketch, 2-minute sketch, 10-minute sketch, you know?
Well, I'm sure that probably is embedded in some of it. You know, we all grew up with SNL and Mad TV and various other sketch comedies. You know, I think that's kind of built into us. I think for myself, writing for the skits versus the commercials, first of all, time wasn't too much of an issue. We knew, one, it could be as long as we wanted it to be, but we also wanted to keep everything as short as possible, knowing how the sound design and the editing process really takes up a huge portion of the actual creation time. We wanted to keep the sketch short and sweet and to the point. And the same for the commercials. And for those, you know, I'm just taking my cue off of, you know, the time period. The only reason the skits existed was to sell the products. So you have the commercial for the product, like for Leave It to Beelzy, the sort of family sitcom / demon themed skit. The commercial comes within the show, and then the show has the item in the skit. So, you know, they're using a gay tag oven or something after a gay tag commercial. All those things. And I don't know, I just liked how they so blatantly sold things back then with a really catchy music in the background and some authoritative sounding guy.
Pretty unapologetically, you know, just this is what we're doing. This is how we're marketing, right?
Yeah. So I'm sure SNL has a hand in that, because I've definitely seen more episodes of SNL than I have listened to radio plays in my lifetime. But
sure,
yeah. But why they make a good marriage?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I would actually, that surprises me that you don't listen to a whole cache of radio plays. I feel like I could definitely see you do that. I mean, we watched a lot of Mystery Science Theater together. That's probably why.
Yeah, totally.
To listen to all that. It's one of those things too. I love like learning about inspirations and how things came to be, and like your comedy too. And I've seen your comedy take in a lot of different forms, and Nick has as well. Like we've seen Vaudevillians, we've seen the Ginger Snapped, and you know, I've seen some clips from RuPaul of Jinkx Monsoon performing herself, and then doing WQUR. And I love like the different inspirations that go into it. I guess I kind of want to learn more of how that comedy built for you. Like, where did you start doing comedy? When did you start breaking into this world yourself?
Yeah. Good. Hard to say. I've always been interested in older period, lots of things, music, I love my mid-century furniture, like you do,
your Globe bar.
Oh yeah.
Right?
My Globe bar, all these vintage affectations. I don't know. I've always felt drawn to them. And specifically, you know, for the Vaudevillians, the show I created with Jinkx Monsoon, that was based off of our interest in 1930s and 40s music and vaudeville characters, and we just extrapolated on that idea and made it into something really weird and ridiculous. So I don't know where the interest came from, but it's definitely influenced pretty much everything I've ever created, especially with Jinkx and our Vaudevillian shows. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. What other things have you? I mean, you were saying that you've done jingles and things like that for others, like, because it's like I feel like you could have done stand up as well, or like you just have a great comedic mind, and so. Has there been other aspirations or other, I mean, like your theater background? I don't really know too much about your theater background besides going to Cornish. We all have the same kind of alma mater and doing plays and things like that within there. But were there other things that you were a part of, other productions? How has your career been, I guess, in that way? Has it just been this?
Well, I mean, certainly recently I haven't had a career to speak of. But, it's interesting. I never saw myself as being someone who would have a theater career based around drag. But that has happened. And I think most of my theater, the big hits on my resume are with drag performers that I've grown to be very close to and love the performances with. So, Jinkx Monsoon and I do our shows and create those and tour those around. In Seattle, every October, I've done Beware the Terror of Gaylord Manor with BenDeLeCreme, written by BenDeLeCreme, which is an amazing, campy, creepy show.
It looks great. Yeah.
And this last year and this year I would have been on a UK tour with Peaches Christ, doing a stage parody show. Last year it was a stage parody show of Death Becomes Her, where I was the Bruce Willis character. And this year it was going to be an Addams Family Values stage parody with me as the Gomez Addams character. So I've been finding myself in these roles recently. With Peaches, it's fun to play the lone male identifying character on stage with a bunch of drag queens who are 5 feet taller than me. playing an authoritative sort of male character, but also being dwarfed and overpowered by every woman on set. That's kind of my role. That's my niche at this point.
It's funny
that you locked in on.
That reminds me, I heard about a production of A Doll's House where they cast all the women as like 6 foot or above and all of the men as 5'8" and below. So you had this like, A Doll's House is all about that being like messed up.
Yeah.
And then, but on stage, the women are just towering over the men. I don't know. What a good statement to make.
Yeah. I mean, I think
a little different than this, but
I not too much though, oddly. I mean, in the shows that Jinkx and myself do, I always play, as Major Scales, my stage character, or whoever I play. I'm always a very uptight man who wants to be in charge, and Jinkx or whoever is usually the much stronger female character who always gets their way. And I think it's
who just is in charge, not wanting to be. Yeah.
And it's fun to see that stage dynamic of a taller person, a shorter person, the person who wants to have the power, not getting the power. It's dealing with clown dynamics, which we all learned in school. And I think it's also funny to see me be thrown around like a rag doll on stage. I like taking that role on.
I love those characters too. Like the characters that are able to just, I've learned that, I love playing like low status characters, like especially in comedy or whatever. Cause one, you get to, like you're in service to like the main plot line and everything by just, come on, let me demand this. Or I like, with Dr. Dan Von Dandy or Major Scales, it sounds like that they're a low status character, but they're trying to achieve high status.
I think they are high
right?
status, but they always lose.
Well, high status, but they always lose.
Yeah, Major
right.
Scales always wants, you know, we're supposed to do this show. Let's give them the show that we told them we were going to do, and that never happens because Jinkx takes control. And for the Vaudevillians, it's the same thing, where I want I want Kitty Witless to perform like I told her to, and she never does.
No, she does not. Well, yeah, I guess for me and my clown work or my comedy work, I've always done just like full on low status characters. They just do whatever they want, which I also really enjoy because it's just you get to be so goofy all around.
And they always win because because they're not as uptight or because they don't feel the need to win. So trying doesn't ruin them.
Totally, totally right. It's a funny dynamic. And it's cool how you're able to take that put it into your career and put it into the drag world as successful shows that you've been able to be a part of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I think the queens that I work with would all consider themselves clowns to an extent, and if they don't, they should. So I think we're all living in that world.
So Major Scales seems like a very unique character in the drag world, where you are like male presenting on stage, and have you met another drag performer who has a similar sort of shtick as you do?
Well, there are certainly other, heightened male characters in different ways, who are either male presenting off stage or otherwise.
Sure. Right.
I think Major Scales is a little different in that technically he's the backup character. I mean, he's the accompanist, but he's also he has a much louder voice on stage than most accompanists. So, and I say heightened male character. I should just say, more high strung. I don't really know. I don't really know what I'm playing up all the time, but I guess I haven't seen anyone who plays their character exactly like me, and I guess that's a good thing, right?
Right.
Of course,
yeah, of course.
Of course.
Cool.
Yeah, that is the thing, though, right? It's like because that's one of the things that I was really excited to talk to you about with Major Scales, Dr. Dan Von Dandy, and the like is with I guess more with Major Scales specifically because that's something that you've been cultivating over a spectrum of things, right? You're performing as Major Scales. Yeah. So it's really interesting to me because it's cool to have that within the drag world. And I'm also like I've seen drag performances, I've seen drag art and things, but I'm in no way an expert on it. So this is me like asking and looking from the outside in. But it's really interesting for me to see how Major Scales, you found this really cool thing with Jinkx and with Peaches and BenDeLeCreme that you provide the foil for them to be able to be fully themselves in the story, right? Mm-hmm. And in the same way that you're saying, like, you provide this character that is demanding high status so that they can overpower and become on top as well. If they didn't have you to do that, that's they have many different ways of doing that I've seen, like RuPaul's Drag Race and all these things have different ways of performing. But it's very interesting to me seeing like what you have created as a character, and in this drag world, it seems to me quite unique. Right, I feel like I haven't seen that around. Yeah,
I think it does happen, but I think it's enjoyable with Jinkx and myself, the aspect that we bring, it's fun to see a guy. It's fun to see a guy taken down a peg, and that's different. And that's different from two queens fighting on stage.
Right.
Because I represent something else. And I think that's enjoyable for me because it has, there's a slight, message to that. And
definitely.
And I think that plays up to, I don't know, both of our acting quality as well.
It Is there any other kind of shows that you would want to be a part of that's like from movies to other plays or things like that? Have you ever had any desire to go into, all right, I'm going to be a part of this, what, Death of a Salesman or whatever, maybe not Arthur Miller, but you know what I mean? Like, but is there any other kind of plays that you're like, oh, I'd love to go into this world as well? Or
yeah, totally. You know, Jinkx and I create most of our own stuff, and that's great. It's very liberating to be able to write your own thing and perform it and change it if you like, because it's yours and you can do what you want with it. So, you know, our shows get edited and revised all the time because we can do it and we want to make it as, you know, good as we can. And it's not some old text that is, you know, cherished. But at the
right, you don't have to call the playwright and or send a letter.
We don't have to pay extra to do this version of it. You know, the Ginger Snapped Junior or whatever. We don't have to pay a different amount.
That I want to see. I want to see that.
It would be a much shorter show. But there's also, you know, doing our own work for so long, it makes me kind of long every once in a while to do someone else's work or to play a character that someone else has created where, you know, it's exercising different muscles of how do I fit myself into the world that already exists here. That's kind of my experience with shows I've done with Peaches Christ and same with Gaylord Manor with BenDeLeCreme. And, you know, I think now what I'd really love to take up more is voiceover work. This is a really good time for it, I think, obviously, especially if you've got a good setup. But, you know, that's always been an interest of mine, and I think it would be a good time to explore it. I've only done a little bit of it with some, you know, Jinkx and I had I don't know if you know this, Warren. Jinkx and I had a cell phone game based off of ourselves a few years ago.
I don't know this. Yeah. What's going on with that?
I think it was called Jinkx Through Time. It was like a Dance Dance Revolution type game, but for your cell phone.
Okay.
Awesome.
And we both got to do our own voices for it. And also some other voices that was enjoyable. I'd love to do more stuff like that. I played a lot of RPG games, so I'd love to play a merchant or something at some point.
Oh man, yes.
Who just says,
the next Skyrim?
Yeah, who just says, you haven't the coin for that. So if you know anyone.
I just got landed in the middle of Skyrim right there.
Yeah, did I?
That's so good. Well, that's a great point as well. I mean, video game art is so interesting for performers, so exciting for performers of all kinds. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I was also really digging The Last of Us game too, because there was the voiceover element to it, but it was also the physical acting element of it too, because they shot it like they did all these shots and people wore the whole ball suit things, and then they acted out those scenes, and I thought that was like so cool to see that, and then you get created as a totally new character. But then it's also great too because I know another good friend of mine who went on. He just did a small thing with the new Halo game, Marco Voli, and he went to go and just play a couple side characters in the video game. So they like got his face, and so it's like they take captures of your face, and then they randomize that face with all the other kind of archives of faces that they've taken. So it's like, at some point, you're going to find that exact thing of Marco, I guess, in the Halo game. But one of the things, though, that is cool is that, like, you just then do voices for... Yeah, you do voices for all these different characters, and that's also pretty exciting of a challenge. It's kind of like commercial work, where you just have to land yourself in a new situation. You have to land yourself into this circumstance and now create a whole nother way of interacting and giving motive to what you're saying, when it's just a bite-sized little line.
Yeah, totally. And you don't know what the full, you'll never know what the full project looks like until long after you've recorded and everyone else has recorded.
That's another great point.
So you can only hope.
Yeah.
I hope this is the energy that they wanted me to come at this with. Every once in a while, in games like Skyrim, you hear one person's voice who's like, that's not what this game is at all.
I feel like they're not from this town, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Right. It's like,
like that sounds like Minnesota. I don't think
why does she? Why did they have a Valley Girl accent to? This doesn't. That's not a Rorikstead dialect.
Yeah, come on. They need to get up on their. They need to get up on. Those artists need to get up on their research there.
Or oftentimes there's one proper noun that one person pronounces differently from the rest of the cast, like a place or a thing.
Right.
And that's always fun to notice.
Someone's name is like Didion, and then the other guy's like, "Did you talk to Didion?"
Yeah, Didion.
And you're like, Didion. You're like, I'm not sure you're in the same group as us.
Someone should have given you this note, I think.
Yeah.
I'm sure Didion would have corrected you about how you're pronouncing their name. At this point, if you're really that close to them. So
I'd love to hear that kind of realism in the game. Have someone actually, the NPC, then like
correct them.
the other NPC.
No.
It's Gideon.
It's actually Gideon.
Not Gideon. He's told you that 3 times. Like, you need to get with it, man.
There's this whole side mission that just is all about them like getting their name wrong,
having to go apologize, and then the big fight.
Then the big fight.
There's like speech therapy later.
But then you gain free speech, so it's okay. It's worth
right.
it.
There you go.
Build 10 points in charisma. There you go. I think we got a game on our hands. We are building one. You already are a part of one game, Richard, and so we can get going on another one. It's
anytime if I get a chance to bring back my gay time travel robot that I played in the first video game, then I'm happy to do that.
I want to make a whole video game with just that robot.
You should.
Just that robot.
You should. Person.
It was written as just a robot where I was supposed to say things like, you don't have that power, or beep, boop, beep, that type of thing. But I asked them, would you mind if I made this robot sound like Paul Lynde? And they said, sure, go with it. So I was able to go, don't have that power yet. Beep, boop, beep. That was a lot more fun for everyone.
Oh, that's so good. That's so awesome. And that's great that they were able to work with you. You're like, let's just make it this way, too.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a robot whose beep and boops have an attitude to them.
Yes.
Just 100%.
Absolutely.
Beep, boop, beep. Excuse me?
A beep, boop. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I felt that. I felt that all the way over here.
Hey, get those voice producers, get those voiceover producers at me. That's what I want.
Yeah.
You can find Richard's information in the lower third below.
Boom, bam, bam, bam. Beep, boop, beep. Yeah, it's and there's some possibilities out there. I mean, video game work is really cool, and theater work. Theater work. Who knows how theater work's gonna end up being made?
Well, I think for the next
nowadays,
I think for the next year, we're gonna see a huge amount of animated work and voice stuff coming out, because if you've got you can have a setup at home. Animators theoretically can write separately from each other for good portions of things.
Yeah.
So I think it's the perfect venue.
Or do what you did with WQUR, where it's like you're sharing content through different formats, right? And you can be, and the other part of it is that you can be remote, you can be other places around, not even in the same city. That's a really good point, and that'll be exciting to see, because we're basically going there anyway, right? It's like, I think that yes, theater will never die, live performance will never die. Yes, we're in a pandemic right now, so that's not there. But maybe that's it. Like, it's giving a rise to these other forms of art and storytelling, like animation, like painting, like being able, all these different things that even as performers that we can be able to be a part of, because we think that like, oh, live theater is going away, but it's like, well, maybe we can use our services for aiding others and doing these kind of projects instead.
Hopefully.
Right? So that's an interesting point. Hopefully, that's the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the hope is that artists can do those things and also still get paid for them, you know?
Right.
Because we can always give away our art for free. People are very glad to take that, but hopefully there's still, you know, we can still live in the society that needs us to pay rent and, you know, make a living.
Absolutely. I'm also all for that.
Yeah, that's my hope, that people realize that the art that is getting through this time is worth supporting and contributing to.
Absolutely. Well, it's crazy too. I mean, that's one of the things. It's like there are all these theaters and comedy clubs, all these and other organizations too that I'm sure are also failing with all this happening right now, this pandemic stuff going on.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of comedy clubs like all across the nation are closing down. I know that some theaters, Idaho Shakespeare Festival where I'm at right now, they had to cancel their whole season. Cleveland had to cancel their whole season. You know, all these different theaters, and who knows how that impacts them financially. That's such a big issue. And it's concerning because, you know, some of these institutions have been around for a very long time. And, you know, where does that money go? Is it going just back up to the 1%, or does it go, how do we get that back down to artists and back down to creating institutions that support artists in the ways that they need to be supported, right? With is also through finances and also through their own ownership of their art.
Yeah.
It's, how do we do that?
I hope you're not asking me, because I wish I could say.
That's why we got you on, Richard. That's why we got you on.
Well, let me solve it for you.
Please solve it for us, because we are a bunch of
all the world's
Nick and I are
problems.
some simpletons, so we bring on. See, that's the thing. That's the shtick of the show, is that Nick and I are simpletons, so we bring on other people to help solve.
Oh
our
no,
problems.
you've
So
made a terrible mistake. It's me.
You don't have the coin for that.
Not enough minerals.
Not enough minerals.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, but I think it's the right assumption to assume that where people are not getting live theater, they're consuming it more now in other places, and that hopefully that will trickle down is the wrong word. I don't like it, but hopefully that will trickle into the people that did lose their positions and their money source, to get it from a source where now there is more money coming in because of the refocus of now everyone's watching everything from a screen, paying for things through a screen. So hopefully that shift that in the economy of arts will eventually trickle down to the performers who are performing for those things now, because there'll be more work for those things because there's more money in that industry. So there'll be more demand for actors, more demand for new scripts. So people that are writing plays right now, like for live theater, maybe write it for a screen, because like, you know, that's something that you can conceivably make money on, even if this COVID thing takes however long it takes.
Yeah.
Or if we get hit by another virus, you know, whatever happens, the screen will not go away. We're not going to get a virus through a screen.
Well,
so,
I mean,
we'll see.
Depends on what your search history is, right?
I mean, thank God for nothing else that we get to suffer through this with the technology that we have. If this were 1918, if we were doing the Spanish flu, forget about it. What are you going to do? Just sit at home all day?
Yeah, you just sit.
It's literally
sometimes
sitting.
you sit and think, and sometimes you just sit.
Oh, I can't imagine.
That's another thing. People are also, that's another reason why we're all going crazy right now too, is because just the thought of people staying at home with themselves, you know, is mind-boggling. You know, I think so many people don't know how to deal with themselves.
I think that's why you're getting a huge outrage from Trump supporters about wanting to go to bars and restaurants, is because they can't stand their own company, so they need to go out and inflict it upon other people.
Slam, right there. Yeah, that. That's it, though. I mean, it's a
Honestly,
thing where
though,
it's
I
like
can't stand my own company either.
I mean, fair enough. I hate myself too, but I don't need to like. I don't also like myself enough to think that you need to suffer through me.
Right.
You know.
No, I
Right,
agree with
right.
that. Yeah.
You need to suffer with my
Let
company.
me stay alone and not have to subject other people.
Right.
Right.
Subject
And-
my villagers on Animal Crossing to me.
Yeah,
That's
right. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean,
take it out on the
they're-
NPCs.
You're not pet villagers that you dress
yes.
up. But you don't own them, but you do dress them.
I don't own them. I do dress them. I do choose.
Wait, you get to pick their outfits?
You can, well,
Yeah.
it's a fine line because some outfits they won't like, but sometimes I'll go to the clothing store and I'll say, you know what, Renee would look great in this full length dress, and sometimes she does,
Right.
and she'll wear that all over the place, and you feel like
Have
you really
you ever
made
been
a difference.
offended by when you go pick out a beautiful dress for Renee and Renee doesn't like it? Are you offended
Oh
by
yeah,
that?
oh absolutely. I gave a dress to Fauna, who is a deer character, and she flat
Fuck you,
out
Fauna.
said, "Oh, you really want me to have this? It's not something I'd normally wear." And that was the end of the conversation. Never wore it once.
Yeah.
I
Bitch.
think she tossed it. I
Oh
think
my
she
God.
tossed
She-
it.
Wow.
Immediately.
Wow.
Although to be fair, I get stuff from them all the time that I immediately sell. So
Okay. Okay.
I immediately throw away this trash.
like, here's a pair of
Fauna might have been holding a grudge.
maybe they're like, here's a pair of cargo pants. I'll say thank you. That's 30 bells I can earn for something.
Yeah, you said thank you. Like, thank you. Like, there's a little voice cracking.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Oh, thank
Oh,
so
it's
nice of
so
you.
interesting.
What a great thought.
Yeah, at least I could fake a thank you better than Fauna did with the dress that I
Yeah.
gave her.
Obviously.
That
It
was,
was
just.
harsh.
Yeah, that was very harsh. I understand that. So what else has been going on with you? And like, you're over in Capitol Hill area, and how has things been just surviving? You've been doing the Animal Crossing, right? You're in your place. What has
Yep.
else been keeping you
Well,
going?
I actually have to make an income, sadly, with the current lack of it from my day job.
Yeah.
So just recently, I took on. I'm now an essential worker. I work at a
Great.
grocery store nearby.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be an essential worker, but
Right.
it's something in my wheelhouse that I've done before, and
Right.
like you said, Nick, with the higher demand for certain things, it's a job that you could take on easily and quickly, and it's thankfully is one of the stores in the area that was requiring people to wear masks before it was a law or mandated,
Mandatory,
which
right.
it is only just now being regulated.
Right.
So you can feel some safety in that, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You're right.
But it's interesting taking on this line of work at my current age, when it's similar to work I did in my early 20s, in my college years.
Right.
It feels slightly regressive in a way, but also it's just interesting to return to something you did as a kid
Right.
and be in your current creakier older body and see how I don't know. Part of me is out of body experiencing it, thinking that it's very interesting, and the other part of me is like, oh, I'm a lot more sore doing this than I used to be.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting. And I hear you on that in the sense of I'm back in my hometown.
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And it was so interesting going from living from my hometown to Seattle, going on to college. Your college years are like finding yourself, whatever that means. But you're going off and you're discovering new things, a whole new world of things. And then all these years later, now back over here for a temporary amount of time. I'm going to be leaving soon, but it was that kind of strange feeling when I first got back of, oh, this is the neighborhood haunts, or like these are the people that I've seen before that I haven't seen in years, you know, like, and it regressive sometimes is the word for it. I try to like, okay, it's not regressive, it's still progress, even though it's in the before location, but it's hard to not have that in your mind. You can easily get that in your mind of like, oh, this is where I was before. It was the past, but it's actually the present. I don't know. I still struggle with that sometimes, and I've been here for about a year and a half now.
Yeah, I mean, that feels, hearing that feels like a long time. Certainly to be home, back home where you grew up, that feels like a long time for me.
Right.
I also grew up in a town,
I feel it a lot.
A small town, so I get that, I think.
Yeah, you did. Where'd you grow up again? What was the town called?
Clarksburg, California, population 362.
My goodness.
And
how you have ended up now in Seattle, Washington, as one of the biggest
little cities.
Yeah. Traveling internationally.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the things is like the job that I was doing felt fairly, what's the word that I'm looking for? It felt fancy. I got to do fancy things. But like any theater work, it's, you know, there's not a lot of stability to it. And, you know, now that it's gone, at least for the moment, it's gone. And so, you know, another thing about theater work can be very fleeting. So, you know, this is what we're living in right now. And once we're done, I'll be able to tell the grandkids that I won't have that, you know, your grandfather worked at a grocery store during the pandemic. And that's going to sound like a really old-timey kind of story.
Yeah, that's great. You know, you are going to tell some grandkids that. They may not be your grandkids, but you're going to tell some grads.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If I still have straight friends. I'm sorry, I'm phasing you out. You have to be ready for that.
Yeah, it's
or
okay.
If we even
it's
exist.
all right, you know.
Everyone's gay.
Or if we even exist. I'm fine with that.
No, I hope to tell that story. And I hope we all are able to tell that story.
Oh man. Yeah, the essential worker. I mean, the essential worker life too is, I mean, that you are helping this community, right? That's a simple, it's a weird thing where it's like something that can maybe feel so small, you know, like oh, I'm just working at this grocery store, but it actually is helping people get the supplies they need.
Yeah.
You know, you're helping people be able to, and like the company is providing jobs and providing opportunities, you know, for people to keep their income, you know, for all that stuff. It's a weird balance, but
yeah. I mean, it is very odd because I was sanitizing in the store the other day. I was just spraying down the banisters. Because we do that every hour now. We spray bleach on every conceivable surface. And a customer passed by me and said, you know, thank you for what you're doing. Like I was serving in the armed forces or something. And I, of course, said, you're welcome, because, you know, I think it needs to be done. But also, I don't know. It has to be done. I wish it didn't have to be done. I think it's just an odd dichotomy. That's all.
Yeah, it really is an odd dichotomy. That's for sure. So, yeah, well, I mean, speaking of like where we're at now and with the future and everything kind of in our sights, because it's like, that's also the other plight of artists, right? Is that we also think about the future a lot. We have to always, how do we build towards something greater? You know, whether we use the past or whether we use the present moment to reflect on the past, or we use the present moment to philosophize on the future. I feel like it's always in service to what's to come, right? And what, as far as for you, and like I know we were talking about like, I think that's something that's very interesting that you said earlier about, you know, just optimism can be a form of privilege and things like that too. But if there was any positive change that was to come from all of this as an artist and what we can do, like what would you see as a possible positive change that we can gain from this experience?
It's hard to say. Like I think I definitely like.
Take the time you need. You are being graded.
No, that's fine. I think my saying that, optimism is a privileged thing partially comes from me having a hard time being optimistic. So I think that's why it's hard for me to come up with an answer for that. But if I were forced to, I think if society sees how important the arts are to them through this pandemic, and sees how it's helped uplift them through it, or at least keep them distracted, whatever it's done to help them, that maybe at some point that will bring more interest back to the arts once we're able to go out and experience them. I'd like to see a return to theaters after this is over. I don't know in what form that'll be. But I'd like to be able to do what I was doing in some form or another. I don't know if that's just me being, me just wanting things to return to normal or not. But I loved what I did, and I think a lot of other theater performers feel the same way. Like the enjoyment of seeing something on the stage and being on the stage performing it.
It's a special connection.
Yeah.
To perform in front of people.
Yes.
With people. It's a really special connection. And I also agree. I hope that it's a glorious return that we were able to get to one day.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some work, but it's also going to, you're right, it's going to take all of us coming together to properly fight this thing and being respectful of each other and being conscious and decent with each other and help supporting each other to combat this thing.
Yes.
But you're right, though. I think when we do make that return, because I want to see the Vaudevillians again on stage. I want to be able to go see, like Gaylord Manor. I want to be able to see all these great productions again, because that's so part of what the human experience is. We are performing for each other, and that's one of the most intimate ways of doing that is just audience and performer right in the same room. So I hope it's glorious as well, and I hope that it's
and my hope is that this future, in whatever the future of theater is, also includes more people of color.
Absolutely,
and
agree with that
if
too.
Anything that this pandemic could do is show that we are all human beings at our basis level, and we're all as susceptible to pain and life as anyone else. If that would help bring all of us more together, I think that would be great. I haven't fully seen it yet. But that's me being optimistic. That's what I hope to see.
Yeah, me too.
That's great. Richard, thank you so much for coming on this podcast.
Thank you for having me.
This was awesome. Yeah, it was really good conversation, and I think that honestly this last little bit especially has gotten me a lot to think about as well. And and that's another great point too, just like how do we lift up our friends that are POC? How do we lift up other people through our art, through our activism, and through our bodies as support to these artists as well, and to a greater community. And we have to figure that out, and we have to be ready to listen and stuff too. But anyway, with all that, you're amazing. Thank you for coming on this podcast. It was truly an awesome conversation. I loved
Richard.
it, man. Yeah. So till next time, because we definitely want to have you on again, because this was a really interesting conversation.
You know where to find me. I'm not leaving my house.
That's great. That's awesome. Well, thank you again, and everybody, thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, y'all. See you later.
Boom.